Now, the story of Nehemiah in the Bible provides a very practical and profound blueprint for the dynamics of change management and leading through resistance. Nehemiah found himself in a scenario where he needed to bring change to an entire nation. It was at a time that the walls of Jerusalem were broken down, the gates were burnt with fire, the enemy had destroyed Jerusalem, Jerusalem was in ruins, and God was looking for a change agent that would go rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. Nehemiah happened to be that change agent. Even though he had a measure of comfort in the palace, he yielded himself to the pursuit of the purpose of God. He chose sacrifice over convenience. So he takes on the role of a transformational leader. He takes on the role of a leader who wants to deploy the dynamics of change that will bring change in reality to the nation of Israel, particularly the city of Jerusalem. I want us to use the example of Nehemiah's leadership to examine the dynamics of change, taking a look from the perspective of the kind of leadership that Nehemiah provided. I would like to read scriptures from Nehemiah chapter 2. Nehemiah chapter 2, beginning from verse 4. Then the king said to me, "What do you request?" So I prayed to the God of heaven, and I said to the king, "If it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor in your sight, I ask that you send me to Judah, to the city of my father's tombs, that I may rebuild it." Take note of that. Nehemiah's assignment is simple. It is to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem that had been broken down. Then the king said to me, the queen also sitting beside him, "How long will your journey be, and when will you return?" So it pleased the king to send me, and I set him a time. Furthermore, I said to the king, "If it pleases the king, let letters be given to me for the governors of the region beyond the river, that they must permit me to pass through till I come to Judah, and a letter to Asaph, the keeper of the king's forest, that he must give me timber to make beams for the gates of the citadel, which pertains to the temple, for the city wall, and for the house that I will occupy." And the king granted them to me according to the good hand of my God upon me. Then I went to the governors in the region beyond the river and gave them the king's letters. Now the king has sent captains of the army and horsemen with me. When Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the Ammonite official heard of it, they were deeply disturbed that a man had come to seek the well-being of the children of Israel. Here Nehemiah embarks on a journey that positions him as the arrowhead, the agent of change in that generation. He needed to activate the dynamics of change. He needed to manage change in such a way that it will give him the right outcome. What is that right outcome? That the city, the walls of Jerusalem, be rebuilt in 52 days. He had his goal, he had his target. But from the moment he stepped to that environment, there was resistance to change. So Nehemiah needed to understand the dynamics of change management and how to lead through resistance. Taking a look at the dynamics of change, Nehemiah's approach. Now, Nehemiah's leadership demonstrates that effective change requires preparation. Effective change equally requires vision and engagement. Nehemiah showed up with a vision burning in his heart. Somewhere in the book of Nehemiah, we are told that it came to his heart. A vision was birthed in his heart. There was a burden in his heart. He had a picture of what he wanted to accomplish in his heart. So change management begins with vision. Leading through resistance begins with vision. Vision is very, very crucial in change management. So Nehemiah shows up on the scene with a burning vision and a burning passion to carry out the vision. Beyond the vision, he had to prepare. It took time to prepare. The first aspect of preparation was spiritual. You read Nehemiah chapter 1, the moment he heard the story of the destruction of the walls and the gates of Jerusalem, the first thing he did was to prepare himself spiritually. He prepared intensively in prayer and fasting. He sought the face of the Lord and asked for the help of God. He sought the face of the Lord and asked for favor in the sight of God and in the sight of his employer, the king. That was the beginning point. Having prayed, he had to take a step of faith to meet with the king, and he had the opportunity to ask for the permission to go, and he was given the permission expressly by the king. These were the initial preparations that he had to make. These were the initial preparations that he had to make. The first component of preparation is spiritual. For every child of God, for every believer, for every Christian, when you want to embark on any assignment, you must set the tone. You must set the foundation right. Begin with spiritual preparation. Spiritual preparation will pave way for success in your venture, in your project. As you step out with intention of effecting change in that organization, in that family, you need to prepare yourself spiritually. As part of the preparation also, he needed to put resources together, particularly material, financial resources. And thankfully, the king gave him the resources he needed, the material, the financial resources required for the execution of that project was made available to him by the king. These were part of the preparations that eventually made him to succeed. Nothing succeeds in a vacuum. No vision succeeds in a vacuum. It takes preparation. It takes preparation. And an aspect of preparation also is to assess the scene. Assess the environment where you want to carry out change. If you do not do a thorough, objective assessment of the environment, of the people, of the situation you want to change, you may run into troubled waters and you may not be able to continue with that project. The project could be aborted as a result of your inability to carry out the necessary assessment. What will be the impact of your change on the people, on the environment? What will be the impact of your change on the two groups of people, both friends and enemies? What will be their reaction to the change that you are bringing? An understanding of their reactions will help you to put a strategy in place to be able to ward off any resistance that could abort your project. Assessment is key. Nehemiah took time to assess the environment, to assess the situation on ground. He stepped out in the night season to carry out his assessment of the city, his assessment of the situation on ground. That assessment also was part of the preparatory process towards the change that he wanted to make happen. Assessment before action. Don't begin to assess in the midst of execution. Carry out your assessment and have the necessary feedback, have the necessary tools you need before you begin to execute. Don't carry out your assessment when you have already hit the ground running, because you are no longer going to have accurate assessment, and when reactions begin to come, you may not be adequately prepared to handle them. Assessment is critical before action. So Nehemiah spent time preparing spiritually, in prayer, in fasting. He took time to prepare by putting together all of the material and the physical resources, the financial resources required for the project. As part of the preparatory process, he took time to assess the environment, to assess the situation, to have a feeler of what is going on in the environment that he wants to effect change. So change management, remember, requires preparation. Part of the preparation is spiritual. Part of the preparation requires that you put resources together. Part of the preparation, it requires that you assess the situation. Beyond that, another critical approach that Nehemiah employed in deploying change and leading through resistance was his ability to share his vision in a compelling manner. He was able to share the vision to the opinion leaders, the critical stakeholders. He communicated the vision passionately. He communicated the vision in a compelling manner that will have their buy-in. The vision has to be communicated in a manner that would be partners will see a need to want to identify with you, to want to buy into it and take ownership of the vision. So Nehemiah took time to communicate the vision. He communicated the vision. Now, in Nehemiah chapter 2, beginning from verse 17, the scripture says, "Then I said to them, you see the distress that we are in, how Jerusalem lies waste, and its gates are burned with fire. Come and let us build the wall of Jerusalem, that we may no longer be a reproach. And I told them of the hand of my God which had been good upon me, and also of the king's words that he had spoken to me. So they said, let us rise and build. And they set their hands to this good work." Here you can see that Nehemiah communicated the vision in a compelling manner that he was able to get their buy-in. They bought into the vision, they took ownership of the vision, and they were ready to run. They were willing to cooperate with him to see to it that the broken down walls were rebuilt. That is the power of vision and the capacity of the leader to communicate the vision passionately and in a compelling manner to get the buy-in of team members is very, very crucial in change management. You cannot change a people that do not believe in your vision. You cannot get the buy-in of a people if they do not believe in your vision. So your vision must be communicated in a manner that becomes believable. A compelling vision that is shared with the people. It's very, very crucial in bringing about restoration, bringing about change, and getting the people to identify with your vision. Another approach that Nehemiah utilized is what is referred to as the we mentality. He did not go to them and playing the king, playing the boss, and giving the impression that everything revolves around him and him alone. He understood the power of teamwork. He understood the power of partnership. So in all of his conversation, you will hear him repeatedly say, we, then I say to them. You see the distress that we are in. The distress that we are in. He carried them along. He made them understand that it was not about him. It was about birthing change, and this change cannot happen without them. He made them understand that they were needed. He made them understand that they were important. He made them understand that their inputs were needed. And that skill of bringing people into partnership, that skill of creating room for teams to air their opinion, to take ownership of the vision, is very, very crucial in change management and in leading through resistance. The we mentality fosters ownership of the vision. Another approach that Nehemiah used is strategic delegation. Strategic delegation. He delegated leaders, stakeholders, not only to take ownership of the vision. The jobs were shared to the 12 tribes, and everybody had a task to carry out. Not only did he delegate them, he delegated them and also gave them authority to take full control of that aspect, that component of the project that was under their supervision. That is very, very critical to success in change management. You cannot change a company, change a church, change a family, change an institution all alone. You are going to need the input of other people. You are going to delegate people to help you carry out the assignment while you provide supervision, while you provide the leadership. People need to be empowered to take decisions. That is also very, very crucial in change management. And as a leader who is leading change, leading in the face of resistance, you must also master the art of review. Having delegated the people, having given them the authority, the power to accomplish their task, because you are the vision, because you are the one that has the template that you've communicated with them, you do not assume that they are going to get it right. Having communicated them, having trained them, having given them the necessary exposure, having committed resources into their hand to enable them execute their mandate, you have the responsibility to come back periodically as a leader to review, to evaluate and be sure that what they are doing is in compliance with the standard that was handed over to them. Now, let's take a look at managing resistance to change. How do you manage resistance to change? In verse 19 of Nehemiah chapter 2, the scripture says, "But when Sanballat the Horonite, Tobiah the Ammonite official, and Geshem the Arab heard of it, they laughed at us and despised us and said, 'What is this thing that you are doing? Will you rebel against the king?'" Here you see resistance to change. Why do people resist change? Why do some persons in institutions and organizations in need of change stand out to oppose change? One of the crucial reasons is insecurity. Some persons have been in the organization for such a long time. They have exerted so much influence for such a long time. They've been beneficiaries of some of the proceeds of the transactions going on in that system, and they are not ready to lose out. They are not ready to be sidetracked by any individual. They will rather fight to stop change. They will resist change because change, even though positive, will rock the table and displace them and deny them the opportunity to have a voice, the opportunity to be relevant. Even though their relevance contradicts the process of change, even though their relevance limits change, they will resist change because they are not out to carry out the goals of the organization. It's not about the growth, it's not about the future, it's not about the progress of the organization. It's about what is in need for me. That is what sustains corruption in organizations. When individuals become insecure, who are deeply rooted in corruption, who are determined to confront change, when you find such people in a system, such a system may not be able to endure. You need to know, as a leader, as a change agent, that anytime you want to bring change, there will always be resistance to change. But you need the wisdom to navigate through such resistance. So how do you manage resistance to change? How do you manage such opposition or resistance to change? In the case of Nehemiah, there were 3 dimensions of resistance. There was ridicule. There was mockery. There was outright intimidation, a threat of attack, and of course there was internal discouragement, fear, and fatigue on the workforce. All of these forces can potentially abort the process of change. But the leader that knows his onions must master the art of managing resistance while managing change and getting the right outcome. How did Nehemiah approach or confront resistance to change? Number 1, He met ridicule with prayer and action. When they ridiculed him and team members, when they threatened to attack them, he resorted to using the potent force of prayer. He prayed and committed the situation into the hand of the Lord. He sought the face of the Lord. He asked for God's intervention. He asked for God's help. So as a Christian, wherever you find yourself in an organization, in an institution, God must have taken you there as a transformational leader, and you have the solution. You want to effect changes that will reposition the organization in order for them to have return on investment. But you are confronted by a class of people. You are confronted by a group of persons that are resistant to change. Most organizations have this clique that have established themselves, that are well-rooted and are determined to resist change as long as it does not give them the upper hand. You need to deal with it spiritually before you deal with it physically. Begin with prayer. That was Nehemiah's approach before he acted. Before he will carry out his task, he will commit all of his tasks to the Lord in prayer. Another approach that Nehemiah used in managing resistance to change is facing intimidation with strategic defense. Yes, he had the backing of God. He had the backing of the king. But he discovered that there was a particular clique, Sanballat and Tobias, who were determined to abort the project, to abort the process of change. He had to do something about it. Strategic defense. He positioned his men to build and at the same time gave them weapons with which to fight. In case the enemy chooses to come to fight, to distract them from building, they will have a weapon with which to fight with. But sometimes the agents that resist change will have to be confronted. It takes confrontation sometimes to see the advancement of the project committed into your hand. Nothing can be left to chance. An object will not move if adequate force is not applied. So there are certain forces coming against you that you will need to resist. You will need to confront when the need arises. If confrontation is an option that will make you continue on that project and achieve all the various timelines and be able to complete your project on time, like Nehemiah had the vision, the goal of completing the project in 52 days, and he was not willing to take no for an answer. So he had to face intimidation with strategic defense. Another approach that Nehemiah used, trying to manage resistance, was to overcome internal fatigue and doubt. When the strength of the people began to fail them, when the people became discouraged, Nehemiah had to motivate them. Nehemiah had to speak words of encouragement. So as a leader, managing change and managing a team through change and also managing resistance to change. You must communicate words of encouragement. You must be someone that understands the art of motivation. You need to motivate team members to be on their feet so that they can give their energy into executing the daily task that they need to execute without distractions. You also need to address internal conflict. Nehemiah discovered over time that there was internal conflict on the team, so he took time to address it. You need to find out, are there internal conflicts on your team? You have the responsibility to address it so that the team can work in unity and be able to achieve their goals. Finally, you need to resist distractions. Nehemiah knew how to resist distractions. Distractions coming from Sanballat, distractions coming from Tobias. He had to learn how to manage distractions. He had to be focused on the assignment. He had to be focused on the project. And to that extent, because he utilized the power of focus, he was able to ward off distractions and was able to sustain the momentum of building what he needed to build. He was able to bet change. He got the right outcome because he was focused on his task. He was focused on the project. He was focused on his goal, and he stuck to his timeline, and as such was able to accomplish the project in 52 days. Friends, you are a change agent. God has given you the capacity to proffer solutions wherever you are. God is counting on you. Go ahead and effect those changes as you take advantage of the principles that we have gleaned from the life of Nehemiah. It is your turn to make the difference, and the Lord will help you in the name of Jesus Christ.